I guess we start this whole thing with hurry up and wait. And that title will become clear as I talk about it. With the notion of how the medical world conceptualizes or thinks about Huntington's disease. And it's what's often referred to as the clinical triad or the clinical trio of symptoms or groups of symptoms. Some doctors may use different terms, but it's essentially the same thing. And that is the movement disorder and all the physical things, the mood disorder, depression, bipolar, movement, mood, and then cognitive disorder. So the movement stuff, as they always say, that's the most apparent. You can see that. Mood with depression and major depressive disorder and suicidality and suicide, and that can clearly be the most troubling. But most often, and not to minimize it, docs and people will figure it out and maybe have to adjust meds, but they have tools to address the depression stuff. The third one is that group of things that are referred to as the cognitive disorder. And that's the one that, in my experience, and again, as John said, I'm not family. I started out in nursing homes. That one is the most, and this is my word, is the most challenging. Movement, mood, and cognitive stuff. I like to get rid of the word cognitive and put it in plain English and refer to it as thinking. And instead of disorder, challenges in thinking. And the stuff I'm talking about under that group of signs and symptoms is that people think slower. Not slow, but always progressively slower over time. And that they have delays in processing, primarily in conversations. And we'll be talking about that. They have difficulty waiting. They live in a multitasking world. I know I'm old enough to remember most of my life, the word multitasking hadn't been invented. And this is a disease where the the challenges thinking want you to, or help make you think in a single task mode, one thing at a time. Or that people really depend, if they're affected, on predictability. There's comfort in knowing what's coming next. And they tend not to like surprises. And that also in this group of things, that people often get overloaded with stimulus, noise, and lights, and people in the environment, and kids running around and doing what they, all that stuff. That's really the group of symptoms that people live with and that carers live with that I want to talk about. The other thing I just want to underline before I begin is this expression that I don't know why I've adopted it, but over the last couple of years, it's become so real to me. And that is this simple truism thing of Huntington's disease happens in the home. Or in my case, it was the nursing home. But for families, Huntington's happens in the home. So the challenge is thinking to talk about this stuff, I think, is practical in the senses of that you encounter this stuff in your home with your loved one, or if you're walking your own HD road and you're affected, that you live with every moment. All these challenges, they don't tend not to come and go. They're omnipresent. They're there all the time. So HD happens in the home. And being a nursing home guy, when we first encountered residents living with Huntington's disease, we also encountered their families. And we were doing our best, but as we began to listen to their stories, we also had underlined by families that the cognitive challenges, or the challenges in thinking, are the things that ended or ruined or complicated jobs that people held, or their entire career, and took away their independence, especially things like driving, which is the mother of all multitasking activities. And certainly it impacts relationships, all of them, whether it's spouse, child, parent, friend, lover, whatever it is. These things can come between people. They're hard to manage, they're hard to understand sometimes, and they can create all kinds of problems. And even with, especially with you guys in the UK, even with the world-class multidisciplinary care that you all have available, still, much of the care, the face-to-face care, care at the coalface, if you will, falls to people in those moments that are in your home. Just like my nursing home. And I think, and some may disagree with it, but over the years, there's been overwhelming agreement that living with those changes in thinking, those challenges in thinking, they are the primary challenge of living with Huntington's disease. And people who are affected, those of you who walk in your own road, you concur with this. And it's also true for your carers and the people who love you and your care partners. One of the things about HD, again, this before, it's just a couple of introductory things. One of the things is, and I don't know if this is a strength or a liability, but this is an interesting topic, Huntington's disease. There's so much to talk about HD. And we do, as a worldwide community, we talk about all kinds of stuff. We talk about clearly research and clinical trials and basic research, lab stuff, all the news as science grows. We talk about patient engagement and advocacy. We talk about, obviously, we talk about fundraising and awareness campaigns. We talk about, we'll always be talking about whether to test or not. And from your country comes all the stuff now is related to youth, but it wasn't always that way for us who've been around a while. We talk about advocacy again. We talk about all the challenges and issues that come up based on where one finds themselves in the constellation of your family, whether you're at risk or whether you've tested and now you're gene positive, pre-symptomatic. All these like constituencies, each compel their own kinds of discussions, and there is so much to talk about. That's good news. That's good news. The issue for me is, and this is in my humble opinion, as we say online, that things like living with the cognitive challenges of HD, there's less and less bandwidth, but they're really important. And they will be until science achieves the vision. So I like to keep this flame alive of that this topic is uniquely important, is essentially important, I guess, is the point. So when we began in my nursing home, we couldn't figure things out, and we listened to families, and they taught us about some of the simple things you can do. So what I'm about to talk about today, none of the stuff I'm talking about is my idea. I mean, I didn't think of anything. I just listened really close. And one of the things that I came to figure out from listening to people is that cognitive challenges have feelings, visceral feelings, and we're going to define that a little bit more. And that helped me understand, and it helped the staff I worked with. It was like one of our aha moments kind of thing. So that's why I want to talk about hurry up and wait, or the cognitive challenges. So we actually begin now. And what I want to do here with you on your afternoon, my morning, is to see if we can to hopefully see what it feels like, and I'm going to come back to this word feel, what it feels like to think with HD, with those unique challenges that HD gives those who are walking their road. And by doing a couple of simple activities in ourselves, those of us without HD, we can simulate those feelings to get a better understanding of what it might be like to actually walk the road with HD. Because for us carers, or you carers, is intimately as you know your loved one who's walking their road. Whether you're a spouse, whether you're a child or a parent, whether you're a brother or a sister, whether you're a friend, doesn't matter the relationship. We can't see, as intimately as we know you, we can't see as my late dad would say, what's going on between your ears. We can't see what's going on in your head. We can see everything else you do, but we can't see what's going on in your head. And though what's going on in your head has some feelings to it. Now, so that's what I want to talk about, because if we better understand that, I think we can become better carers. And if you're walking your own HD road, when we talk about this stuff, I think from what people have said, that it helps you describe what you're living with, what you're experiencing as you face these cognitive challenges. Now, when I say feel, what it might feel like to think with HD, I don't mean all of the psychological, psychodynamic, whatever the correct word is, emotional things like fear and loss and grief and despair and all those things. As real as they are, and they are, that's why I'm pausing, as real as they are, I just want to put them aside for a minute. The feel or the feeling I'm talking about is visceral physical feelings. And the way I explain this or tease it is, you know, the old thing of, at least in US, rub your belly in a circle and tap your head at the same time. Now, when I just did that, I have to think of how to do that. I have to, and as I'm looking into the camera, I want to close my eyes, because to get this going, the circle on my belly, and then see I'm tapping my head at the same, and then I can get it going. But that feeling of having to concentrate to do it, that's the feeling I mean. A visceral thing. And you don't need to have HD to understand that, because we all come wired as humans to, when you do simple things, it has a feeling, because we're human, because we're wired that way. So that's the kind of feeling I'm thinking about. Now, we are going to do a couple of exercises. It's not easy to do this virtually, but we're going to give it a shot. So please indulge us, please help us do it and participate. But the first thing is, if you are somebody who has HD, I don't want you doing these exercises. You get a free pass, but not a total free pass. If you're at home sitting with somebody who doesn't have HD and they're doing them, be cool. Don't chuckle, don't laugh, don't say, see, be cool. But I don't want you to do the exercises, okay? My aim here is not also to tell all of you, whether you walk your HD road yourself, or whether you love somebody, you're a carer, it's not to tell you what you already know. Much of the stuff, if not all of it, but much of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, you already know. In fact, you know way more than you probably feel like you know. Trust me on that. Trust John and all the other professionals. We have great respect for how much you know, even though it probably feels like you don't. But you do. So I'm not here to tell you what you already know. I'm here to help you see it in new ways. And if I can do that, maybe it'll help you teach it or explain it to others in new ways that might be different and more accessible and practical for them to understand. So that said, now we really begin. You'll need a pen, wherever you are at home, you'll need a pen or pencil and a paper to just write some things down. And now would be a good time to get that. Nobody's going to see it, obviously, so don't worry about it. But just a pen and paper to write something down. So before we do that, the 5 challenges that I'm going to talk about are that people think slower, that in terms of memory, it's easier to recognize something than to recall it, that it's more difficult to do 2 things at once, the whole multitasking thing, single tasking thing, that it's also more difficult to organize, plan, and sequence your thoughts before you do something. And finally, people have difficulty waiting. So that's basically what we're going to talk about. But I point this out, not only to tell you where we're headed, but also that that's just 5 of them. If you look in any of the brochures the HDA has or fact sheets, there's way more than 5 cognitive challenges thinking with HD. But we're just going to pick these 5 because they're easier to explain. And also, they're among the most challenging, not in terms of difficulty, but what you're going to see more often than some of the others that you may or may not ever see, but you won't see as often. The premise is simple. The challenges come simply from, I'm not going to get into neuroanatomy because that's way beyond pay grade, but simply to say, address the cause of this. And it's as simple as, excuse me, that there are fewer cells working well in your brain. Some aren't working, but even more probably just aren't firing as efficiently. And this causes the slower processing of everything that you experience, sense, all the sensory stuff, all of the thought stuff. It's because of the effect or the damage or the compromising of those neurons. Everything slows down, and there are delays in processing information. They may be in milliseconds so that you're not even aware of them, but they're there and they progress. So it is a neuron thing. And we're going to come back to that at some point because that's important. All right. So if I asked now, the first exercise, the first thing we want to address is this whole notion of slower thinking. So if I asked you, which I'm not going to ask you yet, to write your name, and here's mine, over and over again, not fast, not slow, just regular, just typical, like you were signing a check, like that. If I asked you to do that, and we counted up how many letters you wrote in a minute, not how many times you wrote your name, how many letters you wrote in a minute, roughly, and this is not high science. This is like, which way is the wind blowing? Holding your finger up, just a rule of thumb. If we counted up the number of letters you wrote a minute in just writing your name, it'd be somewhere between 120 and 200. It's all different. We all have our different characteristic pace. But the point is that range of, let's say, 120 to 200 a minute, that's fluency. That's mastery. Different disciplines call it different things. But we're going to call it fluency for here. That's fluent name writing letters per minute. Now, if we take that and do things slower, because we're human, a couple of different things happen. And that's what I want to show you. So to do this, I want us, when I tell you, to write our names slower. So we're going from the range of fluency down. As we say here, I'm a half an hour north of Boston in the States, Lowell, Massachusetts. We're going down, we're going far down, as we say with Boston accent, far down, Or as we really say, we're going wicked far down to 6 letters a minute. 6 letters a minute is 1 letter every 10 seconds. So that looks like this. And we'll use my name, so we'll use the J. So the J, I would say 1 letter every 10 seconds. It looks like this. I would start now, start the J, and 5 seconds in, I'm halfway through, and 5 more, I'm finishing that first letter, starting the next, and 5 more seconds, I'm halfway through, and 5 more, I'm finishing that, starting. That's what it looks like. Now, that's what I want you to do when I ask you to. So I am going to coach you through this, because I assume you've never done this before. And I will coach you in the same way I just coach myself. I will say, please start the first letter. Now you should be about halfway through, starting the next. Should be about halfway through. That's what we'll be doing. And that's what I want you to do. So and it's weird here because I can't see you, but I want you to take your pen and paper and write your name slowly as I coach you when I tell you to. Now, if you have a real short name, like Tim Fox, 6 letters, just keep writing your name over and over again. The thing is not to run out of letters, so just keep writing your name over and over again until I tell you to stop. I hope that's clear instructions of everybody. I can't think of anything else. So we will begin in 1 second here. I got my phone to check out, do it correctly. Okay. So please begin that first letter. You should be about halfway through that first letter. And finishing the first, starting the second. Halfway through that one. Finishing that one, starting the next. Halfway through. Finishing, starting. 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 Halfway through. Stop. Now, would you like to continue? Now, it's hard because I'm not getting any feedback because I can't see you all. Maybe you can drop it in the chat. But I'm going to presume that you don't want to go on. And I then would say, Uh, now I would ask you, why don't you want to go on? In other words, what did that feel like? What did it feel like? And thank you for the comments. How did that feel? And I'm going to talk. I hope you keep putting the things in the chat. Frustrating. There's one from Laura. Frustrating. Other words to describe it. Frustrating. Simon. Hello, Simon. Any others? Hard work. It's harder. I missed the letter. Heidi, you missed the letter. Exhausting. Thank you, Kaz. Distracted. Oh, this is wonderful. Slow down. Okay. So let's go back to Heidi. You missed the letter. Boring. But you missed the letter. That is not uncommon. When you have to focus on things and drill down and work, as somebody else said, it's hard work. These kind of things, it's not uncommon to write your name and you missed a letter. Often people will talk about how when they slow down, they're so focused on it, they start to question, am I spelling my own name right? Tiring. Thank you for that, Darren. All of these kind of things. But anyway, the group of things, words that we've had two of now, Darren, I forget who else said tiring, exhausting. Tiring, exhausting that's the one I want to focus on, is to do something that you did. And this isn't just writing. It's anything that we as humans do. Once you did it up at that fluent rate and you start to get disfluent, it triggers all of these kinds of things. Not because you have HD, because it's HD that causes the slowing. But when the slowing starts to you get engaged in it, it does things to your performance. And one of them is it's tiring and exhausting and fatiguing and that whole family of words. And you can get distracted and you can forget the letter. And I'm already forgetting some of the things that you named. But you don't want to continue. And you overwhelmingly. And I didn't put those words in your mouth that you typed in. They came from you, and they came from you because you're human. And we're all wired to, once we're in fluency, and it's functional, as people say, and the environment supports the skill at that level. Once it starts to get disfluent, a whole bunch of things are triggered, and you just named them. Another one, I can't remember if somebody said it, they had distractions. One of the things is distractions come easily. We as humans, all of us, are vulnerable to distractions when we start to lose fluency. If we were doing this in a room, in a conference room, I would be pointing out that we would begin to hear like the air conditioner or little things, traffic outside the room perhaps, that you can hear because it's quiet, but those things have been going on since we would have been in the room, and your brain is tuning them out, saying, pay attention to that guy who's talking, or whatever. Your brain does that work for you. It does it less efficiently as you lose that fluent range of whatever it is and begins to erode. So distractions come easily. Now, one more point here before we move on, and it's this. And there's no science behind what I'm about to tell you. This is, as we say in cyberspace, IMHO, in my humble opinion, just an observation. Somewhere, so that was 2 minutes and 20 seconds. That little space of slow writing, that was 2 minutes, 20 seconds. Somewhere in there, many of you began to have a little thing, or maybe on your shoulder, a little voice, if you will, that starts whispering stuff in your ear. And like, Okay, how much longer we got to do this? I get the point. Come on. Ugh, like that. I just want to point out, and that's common when you start to lose fluency for that kind of coaching thing happen. And marathon runners will tell you this. They rehearse their mantras and practice and anticipate all this. But anytime anybody's up here, they can start to think of this. But I want to point out, unless you're trained like they are, those voices never say positive stuff. It's always like this cynical, like, okay, we get the point. How much longer? Nobody's saying, John, rah, rah, you got this. He's only asking you to write your damn name. Come on, man, we got it. No, it's always that kind of cynical stuff, negative stuff. I just want you to remember that. I call that the seeds of misbehavior, because it's one of those feelings that people may be having throughout the day. Maybe, I'm speculating, who knows? And you wonder why they're cranky or have a short fuse. And you say, good morning, Fred. And Fred says, shout alert here. Don't want to scare you. Good morning, Fred. And Fred says, what's so good about it? Or whatever. Because we're unaware of what people carry with them. Like I said, those visceral feelings of tiring, fatiguing, frustrating, boring, all those things. Because you can't see those as well as you know them. I just want to show you that if you did this exercise and you look at it, you realize that this is a time machine. There's my example of my writing my name at 10 letters a minute. It's like parachuting back to when you learned to do cursive writing, because you can't diddle with one dimension of anything we do, any behavior we do. In this case, the frequency, or how often we do it in time, without affecting every other dimension of it. In this example, the quality. So the time machine effect also reflects that when you diddle with one part of behavior, it's going to affect all the others. Okay, so that's the thing about slow writing. Now, or doing things slower? Where most often do we see slower thinking manifested in our day-to-day lives? And the answer is, I think, usually in conversations. And you will often see that conversations between people kind of have a natural back and forth. How you doing? Good. What's new? Not much. How's the weather? Back and forth. And that characteristic back and forth pace is because both people pretty much their thinking is intact, is fine. But if one person has slower thinking, it creates these delays and pauses in conversation. So you don't get this bump, 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 bump. You get bump, 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 bump. And if you're the person with no delay, it feels like sometimes you're pulling the words out of their mouth. Or if you're shifting a car, it's like you're downshifting. They know what they want to say. It's just that it's a little delay in the back and forth nature of it. And the story I always tell about this, my aha moment, and I will be brief because I can go on too detailed about it, because it really had a huge impact on how I viewed all these things. And it's this. One night I was in a care home and I was talking. It was a different night. We were snowed in and everything was calmer than usual. And I got talking with this guy, Tony, who I knew for many years. But you know how it is. The pace in these places is high. Never took the time to have this kind of conversation with him. But he began to tell me about his family and ask me about my family. They're just mundane things. Are you married? You divorced? How many kids do you have? How old are they? What do you used to do for work? That kind of stuff. Just the stuff people chat about as they get to know each other. And it was very warm, the conversation. the content of it was warm, and it was driven by Tony. He kept asking me more questions, and I would ask him about his family. But even though the content was warm, there were a couple of times I could just sense that I was annoying him. And it's important to understand that both things coexisted. So yeah, he was driving the conversation with more questions and it was warm, but at the same time, I could tell I was annoying him. Some of the reason, or the reason why I thought I was annoying him was because there were 2 or 3 moments where he and I would begin to speak at precisely the same moment, which happens in life all the time, where you do that. And I mean, we call it, I'm sorry to step on your words. No, go ahead, you continue. And then the other person continues. So I said to him, Tony, I'm sorry, I'm trying, man. I keep stepping on your words. I'm sorry. The conversation continues, and I remember this so vividly. The conversation continues. I'm not stepping on his words for a while. And then all of a sudden, I ask him, Tony, what's your daughter's name? Now, if I could have zipped it and said, Tony, what's your daughter's name? And just sat back, he would have said this, Tony, what's your daughter's name? Andrea. But he had me with him. So, and I know I'm not alone on this because it's really hard. He had me. So what he got was, Tony, what's your daughter's name? How many kids you got? Boys? Do I know her? And all Tony wants to do is get to Andrea. So that's what happened. So at one point, this conversation is going along, and all of a sudden, Tony clenches his fists and says, and he had a little bit of dysarthria, slurred speech. Tony clenches his fists and says, don't set my ticker back. Now, because of speech, I didn't exactly know what he was saying, but somebody nearby said, I think he said, don't set my ticker back, which I had no idea what he meant by ticker. But what he meant, based on conversations with other people walking their own HD road and Tony the next day, what he was talking about was kind of that second hand on a clock, if you will. In other words, don't set my ticker back, meaning what I was doing. If he's thinking and knows his daughter's name, he's just processing it slower. That's what that arc is. And every time I ask another question, I set him back. And that's what he found annoying and frustrating. And now, and shortly thereafter, there was like unanimous consent among everybody who had processing delays that what's wrong with you, Jim? You never figured that out. But that was mind-bogglingly important to me, was to learn not to set the ticker back. Now, if you are like me and have difficulty doing that, if you have trouble with silence, which I do, I am not a psychologist, meaning they ask you a question, they're trained to listen and very skilled at it, and you see kind of this chin tugging. And as a friend of mine who's a psychologist says, no, we're waiting for you to respond. I can't do that. When there's a delay in that arc, I've got to fill it with words. And again, I know I'm not alone. I don't know what it is. So it's hard work. It's easy to say, don't set the ticker back. It's another to learn to practice it. And I struggle with it now, 30 years later. So that's that notion. And that's how we can accommodate slower thinking as manifested in conversations, is not to set the ticker back. But again, the older I get, man, I realize how hard it is to do that. And I see it in myself. And if you're listening to me closely, You've seen me at 74 years old pause in the middle of a sentence or two, or between ideas. And I live with my adult kids. And when I have that pause, they might start talking about something else because they're my kids. And they got it from me. And I would get really frustrated. It's like, let me finish. But we got grandkids running around, so I have to be a good papa. But it's like, I feel like Tony myself sometimes when my adult kids do that to me. So as hard as it is, the accommodation is don't set the ticker back. Okay, so that's kind of just some general stuff on thinking is slower and what you can do to accommodate it. Next one I want to talk about is this notion of memory. I'm pausing now for transition and to make a point, a key point. I want to underline this before I even say it. Huntington's disease is not Alzheimer's disease. Huntington's disease is not Alzheimer's. It's not like Alzheimer's. Even though we use the thing of somebody once described HD as Alzheimer's plus Parkinson's and whatever the three are. Having had Alzheimer's in my family, losing my late mother-in-law who walked the full road of Alzheimer's, I know that, and I know because of the prevalence of Alzheimer's, many of you know, that those poor souls, they lose their fund of information, their memory. It's gone. It's why you hear people saying, my mother didn't even know me. It's not the case with HD. It is not the case with HD. But it may be more difficult to take a little bit longer to access the information. It may take a little bit longer to answer, to express them, those kind of things that contribute to the delay. But overwhelmingly, that information is still there. That said, I am going to oversimplify the complexity of human memory. There are still people here in the United States, and I'm sure in the UK, studying human memory, getting PhD level studies as we're talking here today. So allow me to oversimplify a real complex thing and talk about two kinds of memory. And one kind is recognition, and one kind is recall. What is recognition? What is recall? I'm going to show you. But I want to make the point that each one, recognition and recall, has a different feeling. So if you would take your pencil and paper and do me one more thing. What I would like you to do is draw a 1 pound coin. Front or back, it doesn't matter. Just draw a 1 pound coin as best you can. Now, okay, stop. That's good. Stop. There's the 1 pound, obverse, reverse, front, back, whatever it is, of the coin. I hope you guys haven't changed your coins over there, by the way. But there it is. So here's the point. If we were in a conference room right now, and we were doing this live, I would be up there, and I would all of a sudden show you the photograph of the pound coins. And then I would just take about 10 seconds, knowing how predictably this is going to happen, and then all of a sudden listen to you all turn to one another, joking and laughing. Look at this, I missed this, chuckling. Oh, look at the picture of the quill. God, I forgot the year. And all of a sudden, there's like a rumbling of chuckling and smiling and pointing out stuff they missed. And it is unbelievable to see how the mood of a room can change when I would just show a picture of coins. The point is those feelings. So asking you to draw the coin as you try to recall it, that's what's on it. That's recall. But when I show you the photograph, bingo, that's recognition. Now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm saying that slow writing feels lousy in all the words, fatiguing, boring, tiring, forgot stuff. That's bad feeling. I'm not saying that drawing a coin is bad at all, because it's not. You just draw it, not a big thing. But what I'm saying is that's a different feeling when I show you that coin and you go, oh man, I forgot this, whatever. It's a different feeling. It's a better feeling than the simple neutral, just trying to draw the coin. There is a feeling to recognition that's very different. And what is to be drawn from this is how we ask questions. Recognition is always easy. That's why back when you were you're learning to write your name at 6 letters a minute, back then, if you missed a day of school, at the end of the school day, you might have called up a friend, a chum, a mate, and said, hey, I was out sick today. Did I miss any exams or tests or quizzes? And it was, yeah, you missed such and such a thing. Now, the next question you may ask, I'm assuming you guys have more integrity than we do here in the US, certainly these days. So our next question will be, can I have the answers? But presuming you have more integrity, your next question might be, what kind of questions were on the test? Because you want multiple choice. You don't want open-ended or essay questions. I don't know what you call them there. For us, it's essay questions. Because essay questions, you have to think more. You have to think of the right answer. You have to figure out what to write, how you're going to word it. You got to build in the BS factor. You may have more integrity than us, but like, how do I convince the teacher I know more than I may actually know? It's a higher order, takes more thought. But when asked a multiple choice question, bingo, there's the answer. All I have to do is somewhat recognize it, given what I know. Now, yes, medical school and law school exams are multiple choice. That's a higher order thing. But the point still remains that it's less work and easier and quicker and feels better to recognize something than it does to have to think about it with an open-ended essay question. And where do we, in our day-to-day lives, ask essay questions? They are predominant in our lives. What do you want for supper? What do you want to do today? And a whole bunch more you can fill in. As opposed to, and the one that I will often say, and you may recognize this, if my wife would come home from work and she flops in the thing and one of those, the shoes fly off and she's had it and she's flopped back in the couch. And I say, hey, let's do takeout tonight. Takeaway, I think you guys say. And she says, yeah. And I'll say, what do you want? And she'll say, I don't know. I don't care, whatever. And I press it. Because I got to go somewhere to get it. And I'll say, no, what do you want? Anything. I don't care. What do you want? All she does, she'll want to make a decision. And I'm asking an open-ended question. So I learn. Maybe I should be saying, in our neighborhood, or in the US, it's takeaway is typically, and again, here in Northeastern Massachusetts, is sub sandwiches, pizza, or Chinese food. So I get really smart and say, when this happens one night, and say, when she says, oh yeah, instead of waiting for her to get a shorter fuse as I'm trying to drill down on what she wants, I say, oh, what would you like? Subs, pizza, or Chinese food? And she says, pizza. And I going, yeah, pizza, no problem. But because all of these simple things are hard to learn, like don't set the ticker back, be quiet, I say, it occurs to me, there are 3 pizza places. So I say, where do you want me to go? Which pizza place? And we go through the same cycle again. I don't care. Wherever, man. But the open-ended questions, having to make a decision feels lousy. And even my best effort to do the multiple choice thing, it takes practice. It takes a lot of thought. None of this stuff is easy, as we're going to get back to, as simple as the notions are. But anyway, wherever you can, ask a question that capitalizes on recognition, because it's easier, and in that kind of conceptual way feels better. Not that the other feels bad, but it's easier this way. So that I just want to point that out. It's not a memory in many, many, many cases. It's a processing delay. Okay, so I want to talk about the third thing I want to talk about today, third feature, and that is how it's more difficult to do things at once, to do 2 things at once. And how when you have to focus on something, not being able to manage this stuff gets really complicated. So, John, we need your help with this. All right?
Yeah.
To show what this is like. So, we're basically going to borrow your central nervous system here for a minute, okay? And here's what we'd like to do. Now, many of you have seen this task before. It's called the Stroop task. If you've been in any research studies like Enroll or anything else, you'll see it. But here's a relative easy one compared to the ones you see in research. And we're going to draft John, because he's a good sport, into doing this. So what we would like you to do is this. Could you read the words left to right, top to bottom?
Red, green, blue, yellow, pink, orange, blue, green, blue, white, green, yellow, orange, blue, white, brown, red, blue, yellow, green, pink, yellow, green, blue, red.
Thank you for being a good sport. Well done. You even built up a rhythm there as the lines, man. It was cool. But wait, there's more.
Green, yellow, white, pink, orange, blue, red, yellow, green, blue, red, blue, green, red, pink, blue, yellow, pink, green, orange, red, blue, orange, red, green.
Brilliant. Thank you. And folks, he didn't know that was coming. All right. So thank you for being a good sport, John. Now, let me ask you some questions. First of all, even with that tiny little screen, I could notice that the first time you did it, you had that nice little rhythm, and your head on the screen was stationary like this. The second one, all I could see in that little box, that screen, is your head going, each one got a little head nod. Look like a little bit forward to a side, but each one, little thing. That is your central nervous system with that introduction. The phrase is, that's where the phrase cognitive dissonance comes from. That little head nod is your brain under stress. If we were doing it live, people would be shifting their weight from one foot to another. They'd be twisting their trunk a little and all this. I can only see your head. So I just want to point that out, that those little subtle signs are, on such a simple thing, those are signs that something's going on in your brain. Just that subtle thing. Now, let me ask you a couple of questions. At any point Or, or let me ask you just open ended. How did you do that? The second one. What was going on in your head?
Um, it just felt like I was having to really think each time. It was just because the first time it just kind of flows, and the second time it's like you have each new word's like a new challenge.
Did you, and don't allow me to put words in your mouth, but at any time, did that little bubble kind of pop to your side and you think, just say the name of the color? Just,
Yes,
so,
all the
yes,
time. Yes, yeah.
right. Okay. So, first of all, how did that, because that's the theme of this, how did that feel?
It just feels like an effort. It's just like it is just
Right.
hard
And
going.
and the next time I see you in person, you're not going to say, Jimmy, let's go get a pint and do the Stroop together. Right? That ain't
No.
happening. But that, so what gets impaired? So, first of all, it feels lousy. When you have HD, we don't know this for a fact, but we can speculate because neuropsych, as much as they study the Stroop, maybe that little coach in your head doesn't, meaning just focus on the color, say the color, tell what to work. Maybe that doesn't pop into your head as quickly, or maybe it's not as accurate, or maybe it gives you bad advice. It's like the old bicycle thing. You tell the kid, no, keep pedaling. You'll get your balance if you keep at it. Don't hesitate. So just blow through it, which would be a disaster. Maybe the coaching isn't like that. But my point of this is it feels lousy to do this stuff to because you got to do two things at once. You got to do what you set out to do, either say the color, and then the other stuff get the cognitive interference. It's not dissonance. Sorry, it's cognitive interference. I said that. I made a mistake. Then the interference is the switch of the color and the meaning, and that's what's the second thing. So it's how do I do two things at once, and it feels lousy. So that's what we're looking for, the feeling, but also to point out the coaching is what gets challenged in HD. So that's the thing of doing two things at once. Um, now, uh, now I want to talk about fourth thing. So again, to review, we talked about slower thinking and the feeling being all the words you said about the writing exercise. Then we did the recall thing, that kind of, oh yeah, that positive thing with that. And then we covered the feeling of what it's like to do the Stroop or with that interference coming in and it's not fun. Now we're going to do another one, uh, that shows how difficult it is to plan, organize, and sequence your thoughts. Now, I've kind of kept it in plain English to this point, and plan, organize, and sequence is kind of is a more professional type of description, but it's because organize, plan, and sequence are each different systems in the brain. So the way we show what this feels like is to do a simple thing, and we will do it. And we'll, since John, you were such a good sport on the first one, let's draft you on this one. And what we would like you to do is a simple arithmetic thing. And what we would like you to do is to count backwards from 100 by sevens.
Right. So 100, 93, 86, 79, 72, um, 63, um, 55,
Okay,
Um,
stop. Point
Thank
made.
goodness.
So, first of all, again, we only see the little box of you, but in this case, it was real easy to see this. Now, again, folks, John had no idea I was going to ask him to do this. That's why he's such a good sport. And I mean that, John. But looking at him on the little screen doing that, I got to ask you, if this was a surprise to you, are the answers written on the ceiling in that room you're in? Because you could see your eyes like looking up. You could see you buying time before you began. You could see the expression on your face. You could see the steam coming out your ears as you're trying to figure this kind of stuff. That is signs, those visual things that we could see even in a little screen of your brain being under stress, meaning you're doing a novel thing. So you see these weird little movements. Body English. I don't know why we call it body English, but we call it in the US body English. Where you say, you kind of, uh, 86. That's, but your body English doesn't work in cognitive tasks. So, but it surely shows us how easily we can put our brains under stress by just changing a few things. Now, let me ask you again, kind of follow-up stuff. For example, how did you get from 93 to 86 in your head? What was going on?
Um, just going down in chunks of working it out. Because I don't know how to do it straight. I have to work
Okay,
it out. Yeah.
let me ask you a question then. And again, don't let me put these words in your mouth. But did you have to do something like, okay, 93, 3 plus 4, 7, okay, 3, I'll go 4 deep into the 80s, 86, something like that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. Yeah.
That's exactly what you're doing. Most people do that, but if there's a handful of people here, it doesn't take many, but people have other cognitive tricks. Like, I forget what they are. Add 10 and take, I don't know what the hell they are. But anyway, most people do it the way you do it, and I do it. Okay. So, what's going on here, and why we say plan, organize, and sequence is you're going in this direction down by sevens, and each step you've got to step outside and do like that little single digit add fact. So where you see 93, 3 plus 4 is 7, I'll take the 3. So 4 deep into the 80s. Okay, 86. Bingo, I go back in. I say 86. 86. 6 plus 1. Okay. So I'll go 1 deep. So now it's 7. I'll go in. However you do it. And again, different people doing everything. This is called serial sevens. It's often part of a mini mental status exam, and you've seen this in research because it is this thing where there are multiple things. You have to do more than 2 things at once. You have to stay focused on the sequence, planning. You have to organize back and forth and do these single digit permutations, figure it out, stick it back here. It's difficult to do these things in your head. Now, why does it get difficult with HD? We don't know. We can only speculate. Even neuropsych people will speculate. And some of it's obvious. It's because of the things I just named. And maybe you don't get as good at the single digit add facts. Or maybe you don't get as good at going back in to go down in that sequence backwards, essentially. That's what gets challenged. And that's where you begin to get not fluent, but you start losing stuff and it feels lousy. And I know that just as we're not going to share a pint and do the Stroop, we ain't sharing the pint and doing serial sevens in a pub. Trust me, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
So those are the 4 kind of feelings I want to share that John experienced doing serial sevens, doing the Stroop. Again, the positive one of recognition of recall and the slow writing. But before I move on, and so to bring this to a close, John is no different than the rest of us, and as he's doing the serial sevens. For the last time now, take your pen and paper. I'll give you a second to get it. Get your pen and paper, and now look at your screen. And I would like you to try this. Ready? Do this long division problem. 16,487 divided by 369. 16,487 divided by 369. Okay, stop. Don't do it. I was only kidding. Don't do it. But I'm sure you didn't want to do that. But if you absolutely had to do it, could you do it? Yeah. You were up in the range of fluency, or as fluent as we got. Back when you were doing the slow writing, learning long division, you probably had 10 long division problems on a manila arithmetic paper. At least that is in the States. So you get, that's probably as good as you got at it. But then you were born into a world, depending on your age, with calculators or cell phones. That skill is no longer supported. Because now we just pick up a phone, and it's done. So it's a good example of when you're down here, and that without use, that goes away, and it feels like crap. Who wants to do long division these days? Because like serial sevens, it's multiple cognitive little exercises that only you can know about going on in your head. Like, oh, you got to do that little estimate, or as we say in the US, the gazintas. How many times does this gazinta that? And then you got to figure that out, and then multiply it out, and then do a subtraction thing, and then get the whatever it is, the outcome of the subtraction, and go back up, carry it, and this process starts again. It feels lousy. You don't want to do it, man. So I want the feeling. So it's not John just doing serial sevens. It's all of us because of the way we're wired, HD or no HD. So that said, the final one is this thing about waiting. So this is real easy. This is a quick one. When I want you to just, I won't even ask, but if you want to type it into the chat, that's good too. But when do we see that people have difficulty time waiting? Well, if you're the carer, you see it a lot probably. Or if you're walking your own HD road, oftentimes you'll wonder or ask, what's taking so long? Kind of thing. But I would say to everybody, carers, fill in the blank of this sentence. When somebody with Huntington's disease wants something, they want it blank. And I know there's a chorus of nows. When somebody with HD wants something, they want it now. And then if we were together and I waited 4 or 5 seconds, somebody would say, how about yesterday? You know, and that's true. We all know what that means. It's so predominant. It's the cognitive phenotype in nature. It's what a neuropsych person would call it. And so that's one, fill it in. And the second one is fill in the blank. Sometimes it seems like people with HD just can't wait. So if that's the case, what do we do? It's really difficult because there's other stuff going on in our lives. But the basic thing is, as best you can, hurry up. Because it's not personality, it's not character, it's a neural thing. It's those brain cells and where that's happening. It's a neural thing, can't wait. So what can we do? Essentially, as best we can. With a roast in the oven and the phone going off and kids running around and got to get to school or work, as best you can, hurry up. So, again, to review the feelings together quickly, it is the feeling of all the words you typed in: slow, frustrating, tiring, fatiguing, distracting, all that stuff. And then the discomfort too of writing slowly and having to consciously focus on it feels lousy. And you don't want to continue, man. And how it's more difficult for John with that cognitive interference, and just that's not fun to do that Stroop thing, nor is it fun to have to do that mental exercise of counting backwards from 100 by 7 serial sevens. All of those feelings with that impaired kind of self-coaching, perhaps. All of those things, if you layer all of those feelings, and again, as I said, I'm only talking about 5 of them. There's way more. But if we layer them one on top of another, and it only gets magnified by HD. Even in ourselves, we lay ourselves, but then magnify it with HD and understand that those challenges are omnipresent all the time if you're awake, all the time. And on top of those feelings, we add that you can't wait for anything, not because of your character. It's difficult to wait. Could you endure with grace waiting for everything you want? Or might it feel like this? Okay, in closing, I want to do two things. I want to do a thing which explains what hurry up and wait is about. So now what I want to do is, let's take 2 of those features and what we talked about. So I want to talk about, I want to take the whole notion of that people process slower, so carer needs to wait. Because of slow processing, setting the ticker back and other things, I want you to wait. But at the same time, your loved one, or if you're walking the road yourself, you can't wait for neuro reasons, not your personality. You can't wait. What do I want you to do to accommodate that? Well, sadly, with all that's going on, as best you can, hurry up. So, for slower thinking, I want you to simply wait. Because they can't wait, I want you to hurry up. So, wait a minute. Do both at the same time? It's absurd. Hurry up and wait at the same time. So you're telling me to hurry up and wait? Everywhere else in our cultures, hurry up and wait means the absurdity of whatever system, especially if you've been in the military. It's a kind of military phrase. What might it feel like to do hurry up and wait day in and day out? Are the carer to do hurry up and wait day in and day out? What might it feel like? Maybe this. Now, if you're the person with HD, we're not here talking about you, we're with you. What might this to live with this feel like for you? Same thing. To do hurry up and wait very seriously, to do it daily, weekly, years, and for many of you, in some families, for generations, to do that kind of thing, to live with the hurry up and wait cognitive challenges, is a profound act of love. I will pause for effect because it's true. And on behalf of John and other professionals who I don't know are here, families, listen to us. All my colleagues agree, because we know how difficult this is, because we see you. We know it's a profound act of love. Again, whether you live with it or you love somebody with HD. Having laid out all these feelings, not the emotional ones, but just the cognitive things that we come wired with, I ask you, have you ever, or do you ever feel overwhelmed? Of course you do. But I want to point out, it is not you. The damn HD is designed that way. It's not any character weakness challenge. It is really hard. If you feel overwhelmed, it's not you. It's the way HD is designed, essentially. That's why my logo for Hurry Up and Wait is a heart, done by my kid many years ago, because it's an act of love. It's really hard. So that said, that pretty much is everything I wanted to cover.